Hi, and welcome to this new episode of my Quebec City.
My name is Kayla, and today I am with.
Rameen
and Agrima.
And today we have gathered to speak about racism and discrimination. But first, I wanted to know what is your definition about racism for you guys?
Well, according to the dictionary, racism is the systematic oppression of a racial group to the economic, political advantage of another. While me personally, I would agree with the definition because I think that um, racism is basically the discrimination and oppression of a person because of their race and ethnic background.
So yeah, I agree. Basically, the way I see it, racism is the unjust treatment of usually minority groups due to some prejudices a person may have, which lead to acts of discrimination and aggressions, which could be micro or more obvious.
Well, I think your definition describes it well, and I feel it's even better than the one found in the dictionary. Now, let's talk about our cultural background, shall we? So, as you may already know, I was born and raised in Quebec. Nothing else to add, but what about you guys?
Well, me, I was born in Pakistan and I moved here to Canada when I was 10.
Yeah, I was born in Nepal and I lived in the US for a while before I moved here when I was 9.
And do you have any cultural shock when coming here in Quebec?
Well, when I first came from Canada, I was living in Toronto for 5 years. So there it was very diverse already. And I mean, yeah, obviously it was a big change because you see all these people from different cultures, and it was nice to like, know stuff about it and stuff. So I didn't personally never really experience any discrimination or racism, or saw a lot of people experience it there. But when I first moved to Quebec 3 years ago, it wasn't very diverse. We wouldn't see a lot of people from our culture and different cultures. And I think I personally some did have some experiences, and I knew a lot of people who did as well. And I think it was just experiences with kind of microaggressions or racial comments or something like that. And I think, yeah, that's pretty much it. But I think the reason because of this is because of the lack of diversity and the knowledge people have about different cultures.
And was it the same for you, Agrima?
Well, I mean, similar to Ramin, I moved here when I was really young, and before I came here, I was in the US. So I was even younger when I lived there. So there wasn't that much of culture shock or any sort of shock really because, kids adapt really well to their situations. But I do remember I was always super surprised with the size of buildings, among other things. So, you know,
And talking about racism and discrimination, did your school do anything to bring awareness for the reality of ethnic groups?
Well, yes, for our school, even though it's not talked about a lot, there is still like discrimination or sometimes microaggressions that you hear, and it's very much real. It's the reality, and we don't really discuss that. So our school did do have an event, a cultural intercultural fair presented by the intercultural club in the school, and we had an exhibit during that event. It was called the I'm Not Racist But exhibit, where we had basically all the students from the school who ever experienced uh, racism, discrimination, microaggressions, or anything like that in the school, and they shared their own personal things, and it was completely anonymous, and no names were used at all. And we just wanted to bring awareness to these issues that aren't really discussed quite often in schools, and that was basically the goal of this exhibit.
And have you ever experienced discrimination before?
yeah, well, kind of. I say kind of because it has never really been overt. It's always been more subtle and it's always been hard to point out like, is it actually racist or is it not? And it happens more when I'm like outside, at the store or walking on the street. It doesn't really happen much when I'm at school. I can't say it's never happened, but I don't know. It doesn't seem to happen as much that I've noticed.
Well, for me personally, I I haven't. Well, mostly I've noticed that yes, you do experience like some sort of like I guess microaggressions or stuff like that outside, mostly in the public. In schools, it's a little less, but it still exists. Even though I would have to agree with Agrima when she said that sometimes it's hard to like try to like define. Was it really racist? Was something they said? It's sometimes hard to figure that out, but I think it's very subtle. It's not too obvious, but it has happened a few times where they would say some microaggressions that they intentionally did not mean to hurt, but it was just a lack of knowledge and they don't really sometimes understand how that could be offensive to other people. And I think that's some sort of comments that I have experienced a few times in school from certain uh, staff members or students as well.
And what do you think we can do to prevent racism and discrimination to happen again? Do you have any solutions that could help us or help other people just understand better your realities?
Well, I think the event that we had, I'm not racist, but was a good example of kind of starting, you know, to bring awareness to this issue really. But we, well, yeah, that could also be one thing. But I think there's a lot of things that we could do because, um, you know, the I'm not racist, but exhibit did bring up some issues with certain staff members and students. So, what we realized from that was that maybe that's just one step, but there's a lot of things that we still need to do to really solve this issue. And I think one of the things we thought was that maybe having teacher and student workshops to really try to explain what is something that they can say that's appropriate and what is something that's inappropriate and stuff like that. I think could really help. Or having workshops, I think I said, maybe like having guest speakers talk about these issues from, because I think we have had that a lot in the intercultural club. And just I think just talking about these issues and talking about these uncomfortable topics and keeping that in the school environment could really help.
Yeah, basically, it's kind of amazing to see just what one exhibit, one event has done to the school. Like just walking down the halls when the exhibit was put up, you could hear the students talk about it, which was great. And they said a lot of interesting things too. Like it was, you could clearly see it was raising awareness. I've heard some students say that stuff like, "Oh, I didn't know that this still happened. This is so uncomfortable." Like they were finally they're beginning to become more aware of the issues that surround their everyday lives, and it was kind of magical to see and empowering.
Inspirational too. Inspired.
Yeah, it made you feel like you were actually doing something, which was great.
Bringing awareness is part of bringing change. I feel like we're kind of bringing change to the school environment, which felt really good as well.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us on this podcast, girls. Really, I'm grateful that you could make it here. And I think our listeners will have learned something from it and hopefully maybe apply it later on if they ever see discrimination or a scene of discrimination in front of them. So, really, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It was a very enlightening and encouraging experience.
Thanks for joining us in our podcast today. We are really glad that you guys took the time to listen to our experiences and ideas. Yeah.
And this was my Quebec City. Thanks for joining us and have a great day.